Well, folks, hello and welcome to the No Password Required podcast. For those who are here in the live audience, I want to welcome you to this. This is our first on-location show at Cyber Florida's Sunshine CyberCon. So thank you all for joining us. I'm from Tampa and I work in Tampa, and these are my favorite 2 days of the year because this is the time when the rest of the world can focus on Tampa cyber. It finally, it's like the broken clock being right twice a day. I always think Tampa is the center of the cybersecurity universe, and at least for these 2 days, Kayley, it is right. So I'm your host of the podcast, Jack Clabby. I'm a cybersecurity attorney at Carlton Fields. With me is my co-host, as always, Kayley Melton, and Kayley is the vice president of U.S. remote publishing teams at KnowBe4. Kayley, could you introduce our first ever live guest?
I would love to. Today, we will be chatting with Ms. Tamiko Fletcher, the CISO at Kennedy Space Center. First and foremost, she's responsible for minimizing Kennedy's cybersecurity risks, which must be a number right around infinity, to infinity and beyond. Tamiko began her career with NASA in 1999 as a cooperative education student. In a place that is known for impressive journeys, the one from cooperative education student to CISO ranks pretty high in our book. So, with that, please welcome Tamiko Fletcher.
All right, so Tamiko, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. You've described, I want to first learn a little bit more about your history and what got you to your position, and then I want to talk more about what you do, because I think that's what we kind of hear about it. But so much of the podcast and the folks who are here at CyberCon are also interested in career trajectories. So I want to kind of start at the beginning. I know you've described your experience as a cooperative education student as being life-changing for you. Can you take us through what that was like and talk a little bit about its impact on you?
Thank you for having me at the first live, right? So it's a lot of pressure, right? So, but it was life-changing because I am just from a small town, originally from a small town called Manning, South Carolina. If you look it up on the map, it's near Travel America. It's probably the best thing we got going for it. Honestly, I love this town, but that's honestly what's in barbecue. We do have good barbecue in Manning. And so as a, sophomore in college from a small town, my high school graduation class was 200 or so people. I walked on the campus of Kennedy Space Center in awe. Well, first of all, I should say, let me backtrack. I was interning already with the South Carolina Department of Transportation, and my mother called me frantically, let's say that. And she says, this guy from NASA is calling you and says, you better call him or you're not going to get this cooperative education program. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? I was like, stop lying. I really did tell my mom, stop lying. Stop lying. What are you talking about? And so I called, and they were like, we've been trying to get in touch with you. We want to offer you this opportunity. So that was already mind-blowing, right? At the time, too, because I'd already been rejected by 2 other internships at the time. So local internships had already rejected me, and I was like, absolutely, NASA is not going to hire Tamiko Fletcher, really? They have no clue who I am. So when I got that call, that was just amazing there. But then to drive down from South Carolina and walk on that campus, see the big NASA bushes there. When you drive, if you come by and do a visitor tour, there's a bush that spells out NASA that they take care of from our horticulturalists there. And just to drive past that and see the VAB as you're driving was I cannot describe how that just felt. Coming from the place where, having a parade to open a Walmart is the biggest thing happening, right? Like that part. So it's just been one of those kind of things. And then every day it's something else amazing. Every year, that kind of thing. So my time there is mind-blowing just because of that fact. NASA does amazing things, right? And you see yourself as this one little dot here. But as I, spend more time and meet more people, actually the story sometimes is similar, right? The story is similar. Like I had no idea NASA was going to call and ask me to come and work for them. Or I put my application in and I wasn't sure. I even watched a movie recently called A Million Miles Away about our first astronaut who was a migrant farmer who turned into an astronaut. He applied for the astronaut program 11 times and he got accepted on the 12th. right? Because he knew he wanted to be an astronaut. These are the type of people that NASA hires. Also, the people who are fanatics about NASA, too. We have fanatics, as we should, right? We do amazing things. But also the folks who never in a million years would have thought they would be working for NASA, and I'm one of those people.
When you first got there, as a cooperative student, what were you doing? What kind of work were you doing?
So I have my undergrad in computer engineering, is where I have my undergrad. So freshman, you go through your freshman and senior, sophomore year. So you're, doing the basic stuff. I'd gone into electronics and those types of things, starting programming, those types of curriculums with school. So I have that background. So hardware and software. So for now it's changed. I feel much more like a dinosaur now. So now the curriculum has changed a lot more. It's a lot more software driven than what it was when I was coming in. So we as computer engineers got a little bit of everything. So we got hardware, we got software, how to run line, all of the above, right? Now things can be more concentrated now. So you can be more focused in software. You can be more focused in networking. More people are getting more computer science degrees than just computer engineering degrees, from what I'm understanding, or specifically a cyber engineering degree, which wasn't an offering when I feel like really old. Like that wasn't even an offering when I was in school. Cybersecurity was not even an offering when I was in school. So that's where I started. So I have my undergrad in computer engineering, my master's in industrial engineering, not imaginary engineering, because that's what they call us. IEs, they call us imaginary engineering. So, earlier when Jason was talking about everyone belongs in cyber, truly everyone does belong in cyber. For me, coming in with an computer engineering, going into IE, people say, how did you end up in cyber? You're not chasing hackers. But I still need that skill set, understanding process improvements and policies, kind of all the boring things that make people go to sleep, make me happy. But also, because the detail portion, the detail portion of it is how I moved from intern to CISO.
Did you get your master's degree years into your
Yes, actually I did. So I hate to be hogging the microphone here.
We'll get another one. But
okay, awesome.
Folks can hear at least our questions a little bit.
Okay, great. So I finished my degree, and I knew that within 2 years I needed to get my master's. I knew, because I hated school. I hate to say that on mic and record it. Sorry, Mom. I studied, I did great, but I was like, I know after I get into my job and really start working that getting a master's or a PhD was going to be a challenge for me. I just know myself personally. So I gave myself 2 years of a break between my undergrad to get my master's, and then I started my master's 2 years later. And also because I got my degree and where I was working, I wanted to be sure, right? There's a lot of money to spend on a master's without really knowing exactly what I wanted to do and be. So I spent that time really understanding my job and what I wanted to do and what was next in my life. So that's why I kind of took that 2 years to then start my master's.
When you finished the master's, did you know that you were going to be invited back to NASA at that point? Or?
So actually I got it while I was working.
Gotcha.
Wow.
So I was getting my master's while working from the University of Miami. So go Canes. And there's a question. I think we're going to get some questions in a few, so we'll save that thought. We'll get to you. Okay. We will get to you. So I got my master's while working. So very hardcore time in my life. Missed a lot of social parties and engagements. Tried to stay track on a lot of stuff. Probably got some gray hairs from that experience as well. But I got my master's while working for NASA with Miami in industrial engineering. And specifically industrial engineering, because sometimes people go into at NASA an engineering management track, but specifically industrial engineering, because again, we didn't have that offering at my college. So I wanted to really understand. I'm one of those kind of people that want to understand what I'm getting myself into before I get myself into it. I still do that in life, generally speaking. So that's kind of where that track goes.
So in your current role, are there opportunities to mentor the next generation?
Absolutely. So being, let me see, I want to say this. Being one of the younger people at NASA in the workforce, I actually love that portion because I'm in the in-between. So I am a little older than I appear, but I love the in-between because I am close enough to the generation coming up, but also to the generation that's been there because, we do amazing things, so we don't lose people often. Like, people come to NASA and they're like, I am leaving when y'all pull me out on a stretcher and then I'm going home. Like, people love what we do. We have a wonderful mission, and that's because we do have a wonderful mission. So I do mentor a lot. I do outreach to schools. I actually work with the National Society of Black Engineers. We do work with Title I schools so they can see what engineers look like, not what they imagine them to be, but what they really are. Also go back home to South Carolina and do work there. So I go back home and do talks with students there. And then I also as our job, so for NASA, our job is to do outreach. So we do science fair judging and a virtual classroom. So I do a lot of that type of work, again, just to be out in the community so people can see and know what's possible.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yes.
All right, now we're cooking with gas. All right, so are success stories like yours common at NASA?
Yes, they are. And it's also based on one's definition of success, right? So everyone has their own definition of what success is for them. So the person who is a flight engineer who gets to do that work may see that as successful in where they want to be. So that is certainly a part of what NASA does. I think anytime we have a mission that can come back successfully, is everyone's living the dream, right? So that is, and even, when we have had, incidents happen, learning from those so that they don't happen again, because this isn't just, flying from Tampa to South Carolina, this is going into space. I really think that each part of that is a success. But again, I hear stories a lot about people who say, I can't believe I'm working. And I'm like, I know, right? It's like, who let us in, right? So,
do you have a business card that says NASA on it?
I do. I used to have paper, but now I try to go more digital, so I'm more digital now. But yeah, it is mind-blowing. I was talking to Lisa. So Lisa, I will use her as an example. Hopefully you don't mind. Reached out to me on LinkedIn, and she's like, I'm geeked to meet Tamiko. And I'm like, I'm not that interesting. I just think it's great. But I'm actually geeked to meet you all. Like, to meet the professionals that I get to meet, to people I get to talk to, actually inspires me more to do what I do. Right, from a professional standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint, because that's important to me too. Is finding things that bring you joy. And if it's not your work, it's my work. But if it's not your work, it's also what you do in your personal life that brings you joy. And that's always important for me.
Going back even to the time when you were applying for the NASA job, but before that, what got you into computers? And then was NASA always the goal, or were there other things that were interesting to you at that time?
So again, we have fanatics for NASA. Okay. I'm not necessarily one of them. Please, I know y'all are recording this. Don't get me fired. But actually, I'll tell you a story. So when I was younger, we had a science experiment. One of mine was I actually did the solar system. I was so proud, right? Came in, did my little balls. I did the coloring, and my teacher was like, this is horrible. I promise you. That's why if you're a teacher, please know that your students are listening to what you're saying. Just honestly. Yes. And I was like, oh. I felt so bad. I went home, I was like, Mom, she didn't like it. I can't believe this. And I never really thought about NASA or space again. And this is very honest. I'm being very honest and transparent. So it wasn't always an end goal, right? But I've always been open to, and I'll be clear, I've always been open to what God does in my life, just in general, right? I'm always surprised. Like, I really am surprised that I'm here speaking to y'all on a podcast and you are actually here listening. Like, people are actually here listening to me. But that wasn't always the end goal. But when I saw it come through the co-op education program, I said, why not? Why not? Why not me? Still, again, not thinking what happened. But you miss every shot you don't take. So cliche, but it's true. You miss every shot you do not take. So imagine, that astronaut that applied 11 times and said, I'm still going to do 12 because that's what I want to do. And even so, NASA is cool as crap, right? Like, so I applied. That's really what my goal was. And that's why I chose the curriculums. What got me into engineering, computer engineering specifically, is my brother. Don't tell him because he'll hold it over my head. My brother worked for Xerox and he was building computers all the time. And I would always visit him. He's building computers in his basement. I was like, I want to do that. I want to build computers. And that's really why I went into computer engineering, because you get a little bit of everything. You build hardware, software, all of it. And I was like, I'm going to be a computer engineer because my brother does cool stuff. And I'm going to show him I can do it too. Right? And that's how I got into computer engineering. And I loved it. And I met great female engineers, other engineers, but I really enjoyed my time asking questions and being curious. I'm sure this is part of my destiny because my mother would always say I always asked a lot of questions. I would always say, why? And she would try to stump me and say, because why has a long tail. And I'm like, what?
Oh, I like that.
And I'd say, why? And I'd say, why? She said, because if it wasn't, it'd be V. And I'm like, what? So I'm telling you, my life, right?
That's a fantastic joke. I've never heard that before.
It's the story of my life, and I think that unbeknownst to me, this was where I was supposed to be, whether I knew it or not. So that's why I'm here, surprisingly here, but here.
Yes. Yeah, so taking that moment of failing your solar system experiment and going through all of your learning into computer engineering and things like that, at what point did it kind of shift and you realized that your dream was possible?
Oh, it still is. I really am amazed every day. I really am. If I could take you back to my little town in South Carolina, you'd be like, really, girl? Small town, like smallest of towns, right? So It's great too when I go home because my family, they're super proud of me. They're really excited. When I first came to NASA, I used to always send them NASA stuff, like stickers and like, stop sending us stuff, girl. You are sending us too much stuff, but it keeps me humble and thankful and grounded to go home, to see, to allow people to see what's possible. To always have a heart of gratitude. I just always have a heart of gratitude everywhere I go and where I am. And I think I really lead. So as a leader, I lead from that place too. Yeah. So I lead from a place of these folks could be working. Like I really am like, you guys could be listening to anyone. You're listening to me. And I feel that same way about who I lead and where I am in management. I'm always thanking folks for their support to me, because no man is an island. I am not here by myself. Thank you. I think I spoke with you. I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to you. And she's like, I'm talking to you. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm just that kind of person. I really am that kind of person. I don't lead with a lot of ego, but I never in my wildest dreams would have think I'd be working here and doing these things.
Can you tell us about your role? What do you do as the CISO at Kennedy Space Center?
Okay, so you're going to think it's really cool what I do as a CISO for NASA. I attend meetings. I have one at 1 o'clock today. I'm in meetings all day, every day. My role really is understanding what's happening from a cyber standpoint conclusively, right? So a lot of hackers here are people who are highly technical. I am having to do both technical and non-technical skills. Also, user training is underneath cybersecurity, so we don't think about those types of things that are a part of cybersecurity as well. Privacy management, so when Wynn was talking about PIB, I took that note like, this is new, this is not PII, right? So really understanding where things are going because we do have to protect our data from foreign entities as well.
I didn't know what that meant when he put it up on the screen, what PIB was. And I was like, I had that moment where I was like, does everyone know what this means?
I know, right?
But then he said it, and I was like, okay, I get it now.
So it's not just me. See, I'm so regular.
I had to say the same way.
I'm so regular. I was too thinking the same
glad
thing.
to hear
Like,
that.
what? So yes, I took notes.
For our listeners, if you've never heard the term PIB, it's personally identifiable behavior.
Yes.
Yes, and Wynn is gesturing to say that he definitely coined it. So
he coined
Wynn Schwartau,
yes.
PIB.
Yes. So my role is really making sure that because we're getting attacked all the time, right? And I always tell folks if a hacker has already penetrated our system, we're too late. Right, so we're always trying to be proactive in our job. So it is, yes, it's a lot of meetings, but it's a lot of meetings about important things, but also understanding what's happening in the Security Operations Center, understanding how things are connected, right, and putting together a strategy for the center that aligns to our agency, right. So at NASA, we have a CISO for NASA, But every center has a CISO as well. So I'm the CISO at Kennedy Space Center because all of our operations are so unique in how we fit the mission for the agency overall. There are 10 NASA centers, 11 if you count our shared services center that takes care of employees. So we all do something unique to the mission of NASA. So you have someone in cyber at each one of those centers, ensuring that we are working with the partners locally, right? Because our partners in Florida aren't going to be the same partners in California. So making sure we're, exchanging data securely, making sure people have the right access who need it. The principles of cybersecurity, CIA principles of cybersecurity. So we're doing that all the time.
But you have the SOC, and you have training, and you have other stuff? Or
so I'm just saying that cyber is a gamut of things, and I am responsible for that gamut of things. And as we move from a more center approach to a more enterprise approach, some of those things are moving to an enterprise, but then also speaking to management, right? So that they understand. Because if I am the program manager for ground support systems, what is important to me is different from the manager for safety and assurance, right? But they still need to understand how cyber is important to all, because if I don't do something safe, that might affect ground support, vice versa. Or if I pivot in from one place on the network to another place, how that's going to change. Did you see how I changed my tone when we started talking about my job?
Yeah.
I don't play about my job.
Incredible.
I don't play about my job.
It's also a restricted facility in addition to being...
So it's also physically restrictive too. However, when you work with a bunch of scientists who want to share, their jobs are to share data, right? Because they're trying to improve on what they're learning. So you have to be just restrictive enough. So I always tell folks, I don't want to not allow you to color in the box. I'm going to tell you it's a box. You can pick all the colors you want, right? And so for the longest, when we talk about cyber, people thought they could pick the shape, the colors, the everything. And so now it's really about helping them understand that there is a box, but you can pick the colors. And let's figure out what the compromise is so that we don't have the Chinese or the Russians sending things to Mars before us. Like there's a reason why we do the things we do, but still share knowingly.
That's one time when I was a prosecutor, I got to go once to a Department of Energy facility, and I was so excited. I had to get special permissions to go. I got through the gate. I got through another gate. They checked my stuff, and I was with people who are very trusted, and I got through, and I was so excited to get in. I was like, "Where are the secret? What am I going to see now?" And at the bay right next door were 4 high school kids who were doing a robots thing.
Oh my God.
And it was a good lesson. It was like, it's a place of business. It's a place of business. Like, in addition to, it was a special thing for me to go that one time.
Absolutely.
But there were high school kids who had a pass, and their mom dropped them off, and they got to work their own. So, like, NASA, you've got everything.
We have everything, right? And so we have visitors coming through the visitors complex, coming to visit, making sure they don't get off the bus and wander. There's just all those things, right? Because cyber isn't just one thing. It's a ton of things that we have to keep in mind when we're talking about protecting data. Really, because we're really talking about protecting data, right?
So for most of our experiences, the general public, even those who are into cyber, like we've experienced Kennedy Space Center watching launches or going to the visitor center. But you've got a working spaceport that's launching things up into the sky. So you've got like ballistic missiles over here, and you've got like astronaut ice cream and kids watching videos with VR headsets over here.
Absolutely.
Do you also deal with the like theme park side of things? And what is that like? Or is that its own thing?
It's its own thing. It really is its own thing, but still they're accessing our facilities. So it's a little bit of it, but also that's a partner for us. So what information do they need from the center to do their operation? So again, we work with Fish and Wildlife. We work with SpaceX, of course. We have partners everywhere, universities that come in, that do proposals. So again, it's about, okay, what information are you collecting? Where is it going? We ask those kind of questions, again, for protecting the data. Yes.
Yeah.
Is SpaceX...
I know nothing about SpaceX.
Okay, I was going to say, they're not like trying to take your employees and things like that?
Well, I mean, so...
You don't have to answer that if you don't.
I don't have to answer that at all, but it's a competitive environment.
Okay.
Cyber is a competitive environment. There are 3.5 million vacancies in cyber that need to be filled. So just imagine in general, right, that it's a competitive environment. I'm sure that we're taking their employees as well. Like, it's one thing to work for SpaceX, it's another thing to work for NASA. Like, to say I actually work for NASA, not just a contractor, it's really nice. It really is. So, it's just competition in general, but they're our partners, so we don't see them as a competitor from that standpoint, because globally they're trying to do similar work for us and help us in our mission as well. So we see them as partners.
Is there, like if there's, how is your relationship like with the main agency from a cyber standpoint? Like if there's an incident, do you have reporting obligations internally that go up? And how does that work?
So we work together, right? So like I gave you the example earlier that what happens at Kennedy between organizations can affect each other. The same thing can be said about each center, right? So we're an enterprise, and so we work from that standpoint. We're an enterprise first, not just centers individually.
Yeah, because we always, when we watch the launches, you've got somebody in
Yes.
Texas and you've got somebody, so it makes sense that all that information.
Yeah, and if you're from Manning, South Carolina, you hear, I work for Kennedy, you just hear NASA. So no one makes any distinguisher between centers either, right? So it just depends, but we do work as a collective to make sure everything goes well. And again, that goes back to my point about each center has their own mission. So the launching is at Kennedy, but mission control is at Johnson. So again, we all are a part of a larger mission for the agency.
Yeah, so we kind of hinted at this, but NASA operations clearly include a lot of controlled technical materials, both military and otherwise. How does that impact your role and responsibility there?
So as I touched on it earlier, it's making sure that the right people have the right data at the right time, right? So that's just the nature of the beast in cyber. And when you have so many partners trying to support, the work that you do, it's keeping everybody in track. Like, okay, this person needs this, and how do you segment that off is important for us in the work we do. It's also being flexible, right? So it's also coming from a place of being flexible. I always come from me specifically at KSC, always ask, how can I help your mission be successful? What is our intent from cybersecurity? How can we meet that? How can we meet both? How can it be a win-win for both of us? Because I do feel like sometimes cyber is the fun police,
Totally.
You can't do anything. You can't go in here, don't go to this website, don't touch nothing, nobody moves, right? But I come in and say, okay, what's your mission? What do you want to do? And how can we help you to be successful from that place first? And then we understand what the risks are. And we, again, here's your box, but here are the crayons you can color in, versus saying you can't color, there's no paper, there's no anything. We do try to allow folks, because it is changing, right? So our partner who's launching astronauts to SpaceX now, it could be somebody else, right? So the environment's always changing, our partners are always changing, what we are working on fluctuates, as contracts come in and go out. So it's all about making sure people understand what the requirements are, and then us ensuring that they're being held to those requirements. And then having some flexibility, right? Because we all know that the IT landscape is changing constantly, right? So that's kind of where we always moving and maneuvering.
That's just funny. It's like when you talk about moving to an enterprise model, that is sort of the same as a lot of industries and probably what a lot of professionals are doing now for their own, credit card company or their own school district or whatever it might be. But there's also a lot of stuff that's unique to you guys. Like you're launching rockets into space. Like what are the challenges that are more unique, but that are unique to the space industry that you guys need to be careful about?
Patching. Okay. If there's a launch, right? Like how do you do that, right? How do you patch if there's a launch? You have to consider those things, right? Patch Tuesday happens at Microsoft. Everybody knows Patch Tuesday, right? But it might be Wednesday or Thursday for some systems at KSC because there's a launch happening and we're in a freeze. So there's things we have to consider from that standpoint, right? And then understanding that, allowing management to understand that that's why maybe a patch didn't get delivered because of a launch issue or something happening, right? But wild. It has to happen.
But that's wild, like just a regular patch to like email.
Well, so those won't be email systems. So we're not launching from our email system. No. But no, seriously. But
I would need a lot of training.
Yes, so do I. I don't feel bad every day. But the systems that do email will be separate from the systems that do mission control work, launch support work. So there are various patches outside of just Microsoft's patches that come out for us in the room. The cyber, there's more than just Microsoft patches, but Microsoft has this Patch Tuesday that they do. Everybody knows about Patch Tuesday. So for emails, yes, if your emailing system is, but say you're on a different system and it's a different vulnerability that you need to patch, that might take a day or two because we have to coordinate things, right? So those are the kind of things that we have to consider because, like you said, the work we do is so unique that you have to be flexible to an extent, right? So you have to be flexible to an extent, but still keep the cybersecurity requirements going and make sure that things are done safely.
Do you ever think that there's we always imagine NASA has those kind of computers where you just move things with your hand like in the movies, but do you guys get access to stuff? Do you have to be more cautious about cool new technology like that because you don't want to mess up something that might be over here like a butterfly effect? Or can you kind of delve into cool stuff like that?
So contact the NASA Public Affairs.
Okay.
So the thing about our agency, though, is that we are an innovative agency. When you think NASA, you think innovation, right? And I believe sometimes, and this is my personal opinion too, I believe sometimes that the way innovation is moving so fast, and especially the things that can be done in movies and those types of things, affect every place, not just NASA and space. So think about as we started seeing CSI on TV, that probably affects how jurors ask questions in law enforcement, right? So it's a similar kind of concept with when you see cool things in the movies shifting around, like, are you guys just, flinging astronauts into space? Right. So we allow for innovation. So we're always looking for and allowing for innovation to solve the mysteries of space. But we also have to do it from a place of cybersecurity, number one, and protecting the information. But yes, it is quite interesting. Some of the projects that are happening, they're not as elaborate as some of our movie sets are, right? Because when people have movie sets, your imagination can run wild because you're not affecting people. But at the same time, we are putting people into space, so we do have to be careful about that and mindful of that. But we do some really cool things at NASA. We do.
Do you do you have a good sense of what? Sometimes you read in the newspaper there's a launch, but they won't tell us what the payload is.
They don't tell me either.
That's what I was wondering.
Or if they tell me, I can't tell you.
Okay.
Right.
Yes, I'm sorry.
You can just know there's a box and there's something important in it.
If they can tell you, they will tell you. Yes. I'll leave it at that.
What about during COVID? Did you have work from home, or was it even at NASA? Okay.
So I actually work from home most of my time, not all of my time. So I think COVID made everybody think differently about how and where we get to work. And it made it happen quicker than any of us wanted to. And I just talked to you about being the in-between in our workforce, right? So for some folks, that's a challenge because I need to see my people, right? I need to see folks come in every day and get work done. But in this environment now with us working from home, we just have to change the paradigm. We have to do things differently. We have to be available differently than what we did. I always tell folks hard is not impossible. It might just be hard, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. So it was a shift for us to make sure too that people were logging into the VPN like they were supposed to, that folks weren't on the VPN and then streaming Netflix because they're home. It
was for research.
Yes, apparently. And so, but again, we do cool things at NASA, but we're facing the same cybersecurity challenges that any other industry is facing when you shift the workforce from coming in every day to going home, right? So making sure that they bring in sensitive data to be shredded or not even print sensitive data at their house. Like, how are you having conversations depending on, what you're talking about? Are you using headphones at home because your wife is, in the next room working from home? It's just really about shifting how people interact because everyone had to shift, right? So that was a challenge from working from home.
Cool.
Yeah.
If NASA can do it,
absolutely.
No other company can complain that a shift.
And if we can patch at the International Space Station, everybody can patch too.
Yes.
We can. And so my CISO says, when people say air gapped, we use that term air gapped a lot. My CISO says, is it in space? Then it's not air gapped. So he's really about when we talk about how we define things like air gaps and isolated and those types of terms we use in cyber, on why we may not be able to patch something or why this may be delayed. We say, where is it? When you say air gap, is it a fire just behind a firewall that's not really air gapped or isolated? We ask these types of questions all the time.
So obviously you work with very skilled people and you're skilled yourself. So when you're building a team that's specifically being put together to tackle a specific challenge, what are you looking for when you're building a team like that?
That's a really good question. So when I'm building a team, specifically in cyber, in my job, when I was came into the organization as a CISO and building the team, I actually sat back and really understood who was here first, like who was already in place. Because first of all, we don't do a lot of hiring in the government in general. Like once you're in, you're in. I'm not going anywhere. Don't ask me. I love it here, right? So, but in general, when I'm building a team, I look at what the issue is and what I'm trying to solve and who can bring the skill sets needed to get that done. And sometimes that's technical folks as well as non-technical, because they're going to see it from a different perspective sometimes when they're non-technical folks. I also profess myself coming into a room that I'm not the most technical person, and I'm okay with saying that. Like for some people, as a CISO, you might be like, oh, she does all the tech stuff. Like, no, I don't. And I'm okay with that, but I surround myself with very technical, capable people, and I know enough to be dangerous, right? Yes. But when I'm building a team specifically, I'm always looking for what I may be weak in. So I also understand what I might be weak in, so I'm bringing someone in who may have that skill set for me according to the issue that I'm trying to resolve. I also look for diversity of thought, so even age differences, because they have different experiences, not just gender differences or ethnicity differences, but I try to make sure my team has a little of all of those things. They are important. And I also think about that hardworking C student. I know we don't, again, I'm sorry to say this, but everyone is not going to be a straight A student, and that's okay as well. But maybe that C student who has perseverance and resilience may look at a problem differently from a different angle because they knew what they had to do to get that C as well, right? Or to even get from a C to an A. Yeah. So I try to actually know and learn people for that reason, because I want to understand what makes them tick, so I know where to place them on a team, right? So if I know that this person likes analyzing data, maybe I'm not going to put them on a team that's going to present to management because they need big picture, right? So it's really understanding your people. And as someone who sits in the place between tech and soft skills, that's a good competency that I have, because I can be a translator between the two and pick people from that standpoint. Because most people in tech aren't people, just being honest. And I try, I hate this, somebody gasp.
Audible gasp.
I heard gasp.
During that work.
Because really, I got into cybersecurity too, to go in the basement and build computers, right? I really did. But I started this understanding that I actually like people.
You could be further away from building computers in a basement now.
I know.
Giving you
I know. Don't tell anybody.
Maybe there's a basement they let you
but
build
that's what
computers.
and most people in tech come in to be at their desk, to do their job, and to not come out of the basement, right? And they will be fine with that. And so understanding people is important, because I truly believe that we are human first, and then we are who our job is. And I want to be able to utilize that person, that whole person. What makes them happy? What makes them excited to come in every day? I'm a touchy-feely engineer, and people are like, oh, God, we got to do that. And they begrudgingly come, and they're like, oh, we're having fun because Tamiko's cool, right? Yeah. But I do, because depending on, again, the project, I may need to pull a different skill from you, and I want to be able to do that. I really do.
Yeah, I absolutely love that.
Can we talk about, like, I don't want to go into politics, but there is the U.S. Space Force now. Has that changed anything for you? It doesn't.
It hasn't. It hasn't changed anything.
They're not using launch space or anything from you guys or anything.
It's the same as when they were the Air Force, right? So they just kind of changed the title. Okay. And there was always a 45th Space Command. So it's really just aligned better to what the 45th Space Command did to be Space Force. So it's not really a significant change that I see, right? So maybe others who are a part of another portion of NASA and management and how we interact with DOD in general, Department of Defense, sorry, we talk in alphabet soup, Department of Defense in general may see it differently, but I don't from what I experience, no.
So I'm even more curious now about the people you work with. Could you talk a little more about your team, the people that you work with every day?
So some things have changed. So I'm no longer the chief of the IT security office at Kennedy Space Center because we have moved to a more enterprise standpoint. That happened probably a couple years ago, actually. But I still have a lot of people that I work with. They're sharp. They're smart and sharp people. They come from various backgrounds. I have a cyber professional who is a immigrant from the Dominican. He remembers when he had to stand in line to be able to work the first computer that came on his island. Like, he remembers those things, right? But that perseverance he's like, if I give him an issue, he's going to work it until, like, from every angle. He's a hard worker. So I have those folks. I have folks who are NASA fanatics, and I love them because they also keep me grounded too and remember that we do cool things at NASA, right? Because I always sometimes tell people I'm on fries, keeping them hot and salted. Like, people are like, you do such good things at NASA. Like, I'm on fries, keeping them hot and salted, right? But really, we do cool things, and they remind me, like, Tamiko, there's a launch today, because sometimes in my role, my head's down, I'm coloring, I'm doing cyber, and I forget there is a launch today. There is something happening. It is going to be cool. I need to go. And I know it sounds crazy that I would forget, but when sometimes you're in a zone and you're like, this is my lane, and I kind of stayed in it. But I have those kind of folks in NASA. I have, in my team, I have folks who are top of the line programmers. I think that cyber does need a lot more programmers in cyber for the work that we do. I have folks who are older and younger that have been there. I have one gentleman, he has been with NASA for 38 years. Wow. He's great. He can rattle off IP addresses like nobody's business, right? So and I keep them on the team because he has that, historical knowledge and understands, and knows who to call if something is happening. So it's that kind of people on the team. But it's really a vast variety of folks on the team who help get cyber done.
That's a great tip, though, about if you want to be an integral member of the team, to start memorizing IP addresses. I like that.
Yeah, that's a hot tip. Go to apply. Tamiko said, if I learned IP addresses.
No, not anymore. Not anymore.
Do you feel like launches are when you and your team feel the most pressure?
I don't know if it's pressure, but I think we're the most excited, right? Because that's the final, I won't say final, but that's, you see the work. You see how the work that you do is a part of NASA, right? When you get to stand outside in front of your building and you get to see a launch happening, you think about every person who works at NASA is a part of this mission, not just from cyber, but from the janitor who, the employee doesn't have to worry about taking their trash out. I mean, it sounds simple, but that's one less thing they have to worry about, so they can focus on the mission of NASA. Like, NASA really says that we all are a part of this goal and this mission here and the work that we do. Is
there any evolution to Kennedy Space Center in the time you've been? I mean, you've been there since '99 now, and so you've seen that some stuff happen. What have been some of the changes that have been important for your role?
Some of the changes that I've seen just in general is the evolution of IT, right? So, upgrading our firing rooms and those types of things. I remember in '99 when I was there was still a rotary phone and the launch controls. They was like, what? Y'all still got a... That was in '99. I saw your face.
No, but that's another thing, because it's like a rotary phone is harder to compromise.
Absolutely.
Than something.
But just upgrading, right? So just the upgrading of the firing room because IT in general has changed, right? So I'll use the analogy, you don't have a refrigerator anymore. You have a refrigerator that tells you the milk is out and orders it at Walmart, right? So it's an IT system now. So it's now an IT system. So just the evolution of IT at the center, and and helping people put that into perspective has certainly been a big change. Also, the diversity of Kennedy Space Center has changed in some places more than others, right? But certainly we are progressing better with bringing in more diverse folks with more diverse backgrounds, more ethnicities coming in versus when I came in '99, because this is mostly a male-dominated field in engineering in general, so a white male-dominated field in engineering, so that's changing as well, and just even our partners, right, and how NASA does business. So we are becoming customers more so than doing the work as well, right? So we're utilizing. We don't have the shuttle any longer. When they retired the shuttle, I literally remember people from my hometown when they retired, they're like, "Are you being laid off? What's happening?" Right?
Oh my God.
Because really, they see NASA as a shuttle program, right?
Yeah.
So we are evolving from how we take people to space as well. So just being able to see that evolution has been a blessing, to be able to be there. 24 years, oh my gosh, 24 years to be able to see all those things has been an interesting journey.
I'll make one comment and ask a question, and then we will open it up. I'll come out. Then, if you guys have questions, just think about them and raise your hand. I'll come out with the microphone, and we can ask them. But I do want to say I got two of the best nights that I've ever had. I got to take one of my kids to sleep under the space shuttle, and it was like the greatest thing ever.
Oh yes.
Do you guys get to do that whenever you want?
No.
No. Okay.
We do not. And some people
Okay.
have been there for a long time, have never done any of those types of things, right? Because the access isn't to everyone. I would say when I was a student, because when you're a student, they're like, "Oh, we got to keep you here," and you get to see the cool stuff. So I've been inside Discovery in the cockpit in the bunny suit. But some people have never done those kind of things, right? We had the Guppy there that transported some stuff, hardware for Artemis. So I actually took some pictures inside the Guppy and those kind of things. So when I do get a chance to, I definitely do those things.
Those are great photographs and everything. All right, so for questions from the audience, we've got one here. All right, so just say, if you can, your first name and then ask your question.
Hello, my name is Brian, and I have a couple of questions for Tamika. My first one being, do you have any intention of pursuing your doctorate?
I do not. I study enough to stay abreast of what's happening with technology, but I don't intend to get another formal degree.
Too much of a flex. Too much of a flex?
It's well, I don't really need the flex. I work for NASA.
That's a good point.
But no, honestly, it's just not a desire of mine, and I don't knock anyone who has that desire to get a PhD. I think if I did go back and get a PhD, it would be actually in education. I'm really passionate about, how we teach our children and in our educational system. My mother was a teacher, so it's really always been, important in our family on how we educate and make people education available to folks formally and informally. But I certainly don't see myself getting a formal PhD, no.
My second question is, did you ever find out how NASA discovered you all those years ago?
So I actually applied. So I applied for the internship program just like everyone else. And right now our applications are open. I think the deadline is coming for the internship program. Please, I'll get with you about that. I know that applications are open for the astronaut program right now. So if you want to be an astronaut, they're open until April 8th, I feel like is the right date. But I applied like everyone else. That's why I was very shocked when I made the list. I really was.
And my last question is, it might be confidential, but have our satellites faced any threats recently, or since you've been there? And how do you think space colonization will affect the current cyber warfare that we have going on?
Ooh, so I think outside of space colonization, right, I think the landscape in general is changing when we talk about cyber warfare. And this is, again, my personal opinion that I am inserting here. I just want to be clear. Just how we do things in general, right? So things I talk about with management at KSC, I try to relate them to what they're hearing on the news or what's happening. Because, again, we are fighting the same fight that any other industry is. It's just that our mission is so much different. But I think that we need to be mindful of how we share information. We need to understand that if I take your lights out, why do I need to shoot you, right? Like if you have no lights or no water, then I don't need to use missiles and those types of systems, to take out a nation, right? Okay. So that's why it's so important for cyber in this environment, because the war landscape is changing.
There you go.
Thank you. Good question. Thank you.
One other question here.
Full disclosure, I have 2 questions.
Okay.
This is Lisa, mentioned earlier, so thank you again, Tamiko, for being here. 2 questions, both of which are really about your personal experience. The first one is, did you ever get to a point, because the way you've been talking about it, very calm and collected, which you would expect, but did you ever get to a point where you're like, wow, this is a lot? Like, this is too much?
Today?
Yeah, just like, as things evolved, and obviously you've seen a lot coming up, like, was it ever to the point where you're like, I'm not sure that I can really handle all these pieces, or that the responsibility became, to the point where you kind of questioned if, your own capability?
So I suffer from imposter syndrome, like most, I believe, suffer from imposter syndrome at some part of their lives. So I was talking outside with someone about the same thing. I think it's important to remind yourself who you are. First of all, I believe comparison kills joy. And so I try not to compare. It's really hard, but you have to remind yourself of that. And I also have a village. So even when life, work, those things are hard, I call on the people who will keep me grounded, remind me who I am and who was created me and all those good things. But and then I take a vacation. Like, you have to say, like, this is a lot going on. I've learned over the years to stand up for myself and what I need to be a good employee. So when I have a new manager, I always sit down with them one-on-one and say, okay, here's what I need to be a good employee for you. Because if you heard me earlier, we are humans first, and then we are employees. Nice. So I don't start my day before 9 o'clock at work. Not because I don't get up. I get up at 5:45 every morning to work out. And then I do yoga, and then I do devotional. I get my mind right to go to work, right? Because then I can come to work. Because I tried it before, and my blood pressure was crazy, and all these kind of things were happening. And I had to realize that I needed to take care of me first, and then I can be a good employee. So actually, my management only has one meeting on Tuesdays at 8:30, because that was a compromise that we could start at 8:30. We have staff at 8:30, but even some of my customers will say, if a vendor comes in, you want to start at 8, Tamiko's not going to be there. Can we start at 9? So people have started respecting that boundary. I think it's important. But we have to advocate for ourselves, as professionals, to say, I have had my limit and I need a moment. Yeah. Some days that is received well, and some days it is not. So when it is not, I have to step back and figure out how else I can manage that stress or the stress of the days. But I certainly get imposter syndrome. I certainly get to the brink of burnout sometimes. I'm a perfectionist, so I'm always working. I'm a workaholic as well, so that's also why I don't start my day till 9, because I'll work all day. But those are the kind of things. Self-awareness is a beautiful thing, and once I know who I was, I could advocate for myself better.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My other question is really about your personal experience, because you sound so humble, right, to be in the position that you're in, and that reflects in the way that you've talked about leadership. How much of, you mentioned being from a small town, how much of where you are and sort of those philosophies are informed by being a Black female as well?
All of them. Every single one of them. As a Black woman, I've had a lot of different experiences in cyber, in the world, just walking out my door, generally speaking. But being from a small town and being a Black woman from a small town, working for the state of South Carolina, I worked in the good old boy system for a long time, having to maneuver through that as a student. So I actually did that as a student, trying to figure that out. But it also informs my decisions as well. I also bring that into the room. So I certainly... The person you see here is a person I am at the center director's office, is a person I just bring my authentic self in any space that I'm in, because I don't want people to feel like they have to be somebody different either, right? So if I can celebrate my own, I allow for others to celebrate their own selves as well. And that work ethic comes from being from, I used to pick cucumbers in the field for $1 for a 5-gallon bucket, right? So I have a really strong work ethic sense, but going home keeps me grounded as well, right? My family could care less about working for NASA. Like, they are proud of me. But like, can you come clean these collard greens, girl? Because we have Thanksgiving dinner in 2 hours, right? And that helps me stay grounded, and that village helps me stay grounded. Like, my village are people who I've had in my life since high school, since college. I keep a very tight group of people close by who will tell me when I'm right and tell me when I'm wrong. And even I allow my employees, right? I was telling the other gentleman outside that I invite my team that if I said something in a meeting that offended you, come see me. Yeah. Maybe not in the meeting now, right? Yeah. But afterwards, come and say, hey, Tamiko, you said something that I didn't like or I misunderstood. Can you clarify? And that's important to me because I don't want it to fester for 3 days and then we create a hostile working environment for people. Like, that's important to me as a person. And I always come into a room with that. I don't have an ego. Like, I really just don't have an ego like that, and that's important for me to maintain.
Yeah, thank you. That's very inspiring.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
You have another question?
Yep.
Real quick, Tamiko. Hi, John Adams. We met earlier.
Yes.
Just real quick question. What's next? What is your? How do you see your legacy ending?
Ooh. So, I've been asked that question, and I think as professionals, and especially for those who are career-oriented, I always think about the next 5 to 10 years, right? And I'm going to answer that question without answering that question intentionally. I think it's good to live in the moment. And I think we are so caught up in what is next that we forget this moment. Right. And so I always tell my managers and I tell people I will be where opportunities and challenges present themselves. And that's where I will be. In 5 years, that could be a different challenge and opportunity. I want to just grow as a person intellectually. But I think more about living in the moment than anything is important. But in 5 years, I hope to be retired on somebody's island with my feet up, with a cocktail or two, just in awe of God's glory and this work that He created. That's kind of where I see myself.
Tamiko, I'm just glad you didn't say artificial intelligence or something.
No.
Everyone's saying they're going to go
I'm
work
sorry.
on AI.
There was one more question. Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, of course.
Me again. So one, I'd like to say, especially in this workforce that seems to very devalue human life and autonomy, I want to say that it's very inspirational to know that you can command that sort of respect at NASA. And my question to you is, how did you get to a point where you can command what you need to do your best work from one of the biggest government agencies on the planet?
Because I failed fast. Because I literally had high blood pressure. And I said no more. Mm-hmm. And I had to stand up for myself, right? Mm-hmm. Because we, like you said, sometimes we don't value humans. And that's when I realized we had to value the person because I had to be valued, right? So when you really understand your worth, you understand and respect the worth of others in spaces, right? And so I take that message, again, I bite the elephant one piece at a time. So I take that message by instilling that in teams that I'm a part of, right? And then I hope that those people then take that to teams that they are a part of so that we change the landscape and the work environment in general, that we remember that people are people, right? And you don't know what folks have to deal with to come into work every day, right? Like they may have an ailing parent, a child that's on the spectrum. There's just even getting up, right, themselves. So once I failed hard and fast, I realized what I needed to do to make myself successful. And it's not hard to advocate for yourself when you find value in yourself. I really find value in who I am, and I ask for that. I may get a wrong answer. I might get, like I said, I might get pushback, but at least I asked for it up front.
Do you ever think about what you would have done had they not, given you that leeway? If it got to a point where your health was too bad or affected that you couldn't?
Again, I have to make myself important first, right? The airplane tells us to take care of ourselves and then help others. So I have to do that. And at some point I would have been rolling out of NASA on a stretcher because I did not see the value in myself. But I think that's the important portion of that message, is really about who do you see yourself as and how can you advocate for you? And others will fall in line. I know it sounds so easy, quote unquote, but it's not. But really, people will fall in line if you ask. You find your voice and you ask for what you need to help everyone be successful. Because I'm coming from a place, I want everyone to be successful. And once I put it in that standpoint, I think people saw the value in what I was asking.
It's better to ask and get a no than to not ask at all.
Yes, absolutely. And then you know how to maneuver, right? So then I can say, well, maybe I need to find another job that does value the things that are important to me, right? So not that I'm leaving NASA, I just want to be clear in the camera. But, you find people who are going to respect those boundaries and have that. And it's not going to come overnight, right? It's not going to come, and it's still sometimes a push and a struggle, right? Because management changed and people changes and the environment changes and what's happening. But you should always be a strong advocate for yourself.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.
I've heard that described sometimes as harvesting a no. I'm going to go out and harvest a no.
That's a good one.
Make me resilient.
It does make
And
you
eventually,
resilient.
I'm going to get a yes. We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we're going to have our lifestyle polygraph. So stay with us.
Welcome back. As many of you know, the Lifestyle Polygraph is a test used by the federal government to determine if a person is worthy of learning some of our nation's most important secrets. Here, however, we use this technique for only slightly lower stakes to determine whether our guest can join our fantasy cybersecurity squad. Tamiko, are you ready for the Lifestyle Polygraph?
I think I am.
Okay.
Okay.
Number 1, you've described that being the only with a seat at the table allows you to be part of the decision to invite others to the table. What do you see as the greatest responsibility in that role?
Inviting them. Actually inviting them, right? Yeah. Like, it's one thing to be at the table and then you don't bring anybody in, right? So it's important to actually do that, to invite them in the room. Yeah.
Number 2, how do you give the moment the credit it deserves?
Ooh. You express gratitude and you acknowledge those who helped you get there. Are my answers too short? I feel very
really
long-winded.
No, we're going to, no, you're doing
Okay,
this is really
all right.
good.
I was very nervous when I read this outline.
No, I love it. All right, number 3. You were born in a very small South Carolina town, the smallest of towns as you've described. When you go back, you make an effort to show the community that someone from there can go on to do great things. Can you tell us about the experience of going back? I know we touched on it a bit.
Yeah, it's very eye-opening. It's great to go back. I'm not one of those people who like to be made a fuss over either, so that's kind of challenging. Yeah. Believe it or not. I'm just not.
You work at a spaceship factory, basically.
It's also crazy. But I like going home and just showing children what's possible. Because my mom's church is literally like 2 miles from my house. So I go home and talk to them about, like, this is actually someone who lives down the street who did this thing.
Right.
Yeah. So it shows them it's not something they have to see on TV. It's not something that they have to read about. They actually can touch and feel this person and ask as many questions as they would like. So that's how I try to go back and interact with them. But they also keep me grateful for having these moments, right? And being thankful that I was chosen, selected, put in a place to have these conversations with others, even to bring light to my little small town. I think big things come from small towns. It's always my saying too. Big things come from small towns. So I'm excited when I get to go home.
Is a lot of the recruiting that happens for the roles at Kennedy Space Center from Florida, or people traveling
all over
to come to that job?
So, we put our blast out now through social media because we have social media. But NASA has a participation at various platforms. So HBCU days we do recruiting at PWIs as well. So we do quite a bit. I'm sorry, I speak in alphabet soup. My apologies.
PWI, I didn't understand.
Predominantly white institutions.
Got it, okay.
My apologies. So we speak at all kinds of universities. We do career days at schools. We do those kind of things all the time. So you can get a broad gamut of people applying for jobs. And then also, I think the beauty of being in Florida, or being close to a center. So if you're in Texas near Houston, or if you're in California near one of our 2 centers there, you get to see it all the time, right? So we do get to bring in a lot of students from like UCF and USF, right? Because they're right there, right? And you have, it's an hour commute. I'm already making an hour commute. So you get to pick from where you're close by. I think it's really nice. But we can recruit from every and any angle, anywhere.
But like, if you're a UCF student and you're interested in working for NASA, you don't need to move to Kentucky to get looked at.
Absolutely,
you can get looked at
because you have a
locally, too.
center right here.
that's
Yeah, but also too, you could go to Johnson if you just want to get away. But that's the beauty of being here in Florida, that we have Kennedy right there.
Okay, number 4. Which do you hope to see more of in your lifetime? University of South Carolina national championships or successful Mars landings?
Ooh, I gotta choose. It's like choosing my favorite shoe.
Someone from the USC basketball team. landing on Mars.
It's. I actually want to see the Mars landing. I really do. We've done a lot of work to try to get there. So I would love to see that landing. I think I would feel the same way some of our employees feel about being through the shuttle era, now going into Artemis era. They want to see Artemis with astronauts on. I think I would feel the same way about the Mars landing and, being able to see people on Mars.
Are there camps within just the group that you work with at NASA that talks about this? I mean, that talks about, human cargo spacecraft versus robots going up. Like, do people?
Well, I'm
have
sure there are
feelings?
people talking about it. I'm just not in those conversations. Generally speaking, I'm not in those conversations. Again, I'm usually in my lane, cyber. But those conversations, I'm sure, are being held. I think the challenge is, like I said, we're not just flying from Tampa to South Carolina. Like, we're making big changes, but also the astronauts understand that when they sign up. Like, they know that that's the job that they're signing up to do when they take on that type of mission. So power to them. I applaud them. I'm grateful to them for wanting to explore in those ways. So I'm excited about when people want to go themselves and see and touch and feel. Like, could you imagine?
I think about it probably once a day. Honestly, going to Mars. We have a conversation topic we talk about at dinner in my house sometimes about if you were allowed to go to Mars, and you could safely be there, but it was a one-way trip. Would you go?
What is the...
Depending on how I'm feeling, sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say no.
Depending on the day.
Do you think people at NASA, like if like one of your team, right, your colleagues who doesn't work directly with that but works on the cyber side, like if they were said, okay, we need a cyber person on Mars,
I think somebody would sign up.
They would
Yes,
say, yeah.
absolutely,
Pretty cool.
Absolutely. It wouldn't be me, but I think someone. I don't think I would, but I would love to see someone on Mars outside of Matt Damon.
Right.
Yeah.
All up there
that
by
could be a
himself.
prize at the holiday party. It's like
exactly.
the person who, there's a lottery and then the person who wins it
That's
gets
who
to
wins it,
go.
goes
You're the
to go to Mars.
cybersecurity representative of a city on Mars we're building.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, final question.
Okay.
And this is the one maybe many in the audience have been waiting for. Our assumption is that you might have some unique insights on extraterrestrial UFOs. Can you give us your take without scaring us too much?
If I tell you, I gotta kill you. No. Actually, I don't have any takes, right? But I do get asked a lot. So people send me pictures that I know they were like, hey, do you think this is a UFO? And I was like, well, it is because we can't identify it.
It's
So
unidentified,
technically
so.
it is a UFO.
Yep.
But I don't know. Like,
People send you pictures of of aliens or with
people who I know, not
Okay, yeah.
not like random strangers, but
like
which
the
is even
doctor
more
problem.
surprising because they actually know me and they're
Right.
have you seen
you know what
this?
I do, right? Like
Right.
I get article. I'm telling you guys.
that's awesome. You
Regular-
should encourage that. Like, come on,
Yeah.
send me your
No.
alien pictures. I'll do an
You know,
analysis of it.
Now people are going to
somehow.
find me on LinkedIn. They're going to send
Right,
me alien
right.
pictures. Don't encourage it. But there isn't anything I can share because I don't know of anything on it, and I'm just being very honest.
Yeah.
Unidentified flying objects are just that. I think they're changing the name a little bit. I think there was somewhere in the news that they're changing the title.
Yeah.
Yes. So I believe they are. I didn't say that they weren't. I believe that they are. But I don't know of any aliens anywhere. Somebody may, but I don't have a skeleton somewhere that I can pull out and show you all. of someone with a big head and big eyes. I just don't have that. But are they out
That's a
there?
shame.
It's possible. It's absolutely possible.
Yeah. Well,
On LinkedIn.
Wade has agreed to send us the link. If we get that through the podcast, we'll post that
We'll post
through our
that.
socials.
we will not click on it ourselves.
Please
but we
don't.
will post it for you to try.
If you get an email from Wynn, it's a test. Tamiko, thank you so much
Thank you.
for joining us.
I appreciate
If our
it.
listeners do want to connect with you in a professional environment, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can find me on LinkedIn. And if you really want to connect with me, don't use the standard, I saw you on LinkedIn. Like, tell me, so I'm in cyber, right? So if you just send me just a link, I'm probably not going to click on it. I'm just going to be honest because I feel like it's a phishing attempt. It's just the world I work in. So you need to tell me like where you met me, how you might know me. And I usually click on people that I know, right? So I knew I was going to meet Lisa today. So I'll be going in to connect with her. But I get so much like spam and phishing. And because of what I do, I just am hesitant. I don't do a lot of clicking.
Yep.
So you have to say like, I heard you on this or I saw you this place. So I know who you are before I'll accept. Because then I think you're going to try to hack into my system and find out my favorite color and my first pet name or something like that, right?
Get those real alien pictures.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, that brings us to the end of the show. I want to first say thank you so much, Tamiko, for joining us. This was fantastic
Yeah,
to talk to you
You're
today.
welcome.
And, Kayley, what did you learn today?
Today, I learned how very important it is in my own path of leadership to truly take the time to take care of myself. It was such an inspiration to hear you talk about your style of leadership. And yeah, I think that's something that I just need to take with me.
And I've been long sampling the question of what do successful people do in the morning. And this is another data point that makes me disappointed that it's yet another successful person who gets up really early in the morning.
No, why
It's
is
ju-
it never
the
late
data
at
is
But I
night?
go to bed
overwhelming.
early too. I'm such an old lady. I'm in bed at 10.
Yeah, look, the data, we've been doing this informally, but the data is overwhelming that successful people get up early, even if they also go to bed early.
So I had to trick myself. So can I just
Yeah,
end on
please.
this?
How
I had
did
to
you do
trick
this?
myself, honestly. So I work out at 6 in the morning with a trainer, and so I actually am a night owl naturally.
Yeah.
So when we first started working out, we've been working out for like 7 years now. Don't tell him because I don't look like I've been working out for 7 years. But I would sleep in my workout clothes.
Oh.
That's how I prepared myself. It's one less step I had to take in the mornings, right? And then now it's just habit. So now it's years, so now it's habit. But for months, I would already be in my workout clothes and ready.
And you're ready to go, so you lower the barrier, and then you've got an accountability buddy
Absolutely.
too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's how I changed it.
My colleague Mike Bailey's here, and he didn't know there was a 6 in the morning. He thought it was just an evening thing. No, I'm kidding. He knows. He's an early get-up guy. All right. Well, for the entire No Password Required team, I'm Jack Clabby. With me is Kayley Melton. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk again soon.